The girl had drawn a purple tree on a piece of yellow paper and stuck it to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a star. Ravi Dhawan stared at it while he drank his coffee. It was a nice drawing. His daughter had made it. He was sure of that, but he could not remember when she had made it, and that small gap in his memory sat in his chest like a stone he could not cough up. "You are staring at that thing again," his wife said from behind him. Her name was Priya. She smelled like soap and warm bread, and she kissed the back of his neck as she reached past him for a cup. "She made it last Tuesday. You watched her do it." "Right," Ravi said. "Last Tuesday." He finished his coffee, kissed his daughter on the forehead, and walked to work. The port was 6 blocks away. He repaired skiffs for a living, small cargo shuttles that ferried goods between the colony districts. It was honest work. Simple. The kind of life he had always wanted. The sun was warm on his face. The neighbors waved. A woman named Deal from 3 doors down said, "Good morning," and asked about his back, which had been sore last week. Everything was exactly as it should be. So why did it feel like a shirt that did not quite fit? He worked through the morning. Bolts and wiring and hydraulic lines. His hands knew what to do even when his mind wandered. At lunch, he sat on a crate and ate a sandwich and watched the street and tried to figure out what was bothering him. It was the randomness, or rather, the lack of it. Every morning, the same woman walked her dog past the port at exactly 11:15. Every afternoon, the clouds drifted left to right across the sky in the same pattern. Every evening, the sunset painted the buildings in the exact same shade of orange. Ravi had grown up in a colony world where dust storms could roll in without warning and power grids failed on random Thursdays. He knew what a real world felt like. It felt messy, unpredictable, full of small frustrations and accidents and things that made no sense. This world was too smooth, too clean, like someone had built it from a picture of happiness rather than from happiness itself. He said nothing to anyone. He went home. He played with his daughter. He ate dinner with Priya and laughed at her jokes and held her hand on the couch and told himself he was being stupid. This was his life. This was real. That night, he dreamed. He was in a cargo hold. Red lights flashing. Alarms screaming. There were people behind him, dozens of them, huddled against the walls with fear in their eyes. Reptilian people with green-gray skin and wide, terrified mouths. He was trying to get to the cockpit, but his legs would not move. Then cold hands grabbed his head and pressed something hard and flat against his temples, and the world turned white. He woke up gasping. Priya rolled over and put her arm around him. "Bad dream." "Yeah," he whispered. "Bad dream." He lay there in the dark, heart pounding, and stared at the ceiling. The dream had not felt like a dream. It had felt like a memory. He could still feel the cold metal on his temples. He could still hear the alarms. He could still see those frightened reptilian faces. The next morning, he looked at the purple tree on the fridge. It had changed. The trunk was thicker now, and there were 2 birds in the branches that had not been there before. He stared at it for a long time. "Beautiful, right?" Priya said. "She's getting so much better at drawing." "When did she add the birds?" Priya tilted her head. "They were always there, Ravi." They were not. He was certain. He had stared at that drawing every morning for days, and there had been no birds. But his wife's face was calm and sure, and she looked at him with those warm brown eyes, and he almost believed her. Almost let it go. Instead, he went to the windowsill in the bedroom. He took a coin from his pocket. He placed it heads up on the sill. He memorized its position, exactly 4 centimeters from the edge, touching the base of a small clay pot. He told no one. He went to work. He came home. He ate dinner. He went to bed. At 2 in the morning, he got up quietly and walked to the window. The coin was tails up. It had moved 1 centimeter to the left. The clay pot had shifted to accommodate it. He stood there in the dark, barely breathing. The world around him was silent and perfect and warm, and it wanted him to go back to bed and forget what he had seen. He could feel that want pressing against him like a soft hand on his chest. Sleep. Be happy. Do not look too closely. Ravi picked up the coin and held it tight in his fist. He was not going back to sleep. Not tonight. Maybe not ever again. Because he knew now, with the cold, hard certainty of a man who had survived too many bad days to be fooled by a perfect one, that none of this was real. The house, the wife, the daughter, the purple tree on the fridge. Someone had built this world for him. Someone had put him inside it, and he was going to find out why. Somewhere in the real universe, in a facility that floated between two dead moons, a woman with 4 eyes and pale blue skin watched a screen full of numbers she did not like. Selu had been a mind weaver for 12 years. She had designed dream prisons for warlords, terrorists, and psychic criminals so dangerous they could kill with a thought. Every single one of them had settled into their constructed reality within 72 hours. Every single one had lived out quiet, peaceful false lives without ever suspecting the truth. The human on her screen had been inside for 9 days, and his brain was doing something she had never seen before. His pattern recognition is spiking again, she said to Director Ossel, who stood behind her with his arms folded and his face arranged into permanent disapproval. Every 6 to 8 hours, his neural activity surges. He is scanning. Scanning what? Everything. His environment. The people in it. The physics. He is testing his reality like a scientist running experiments. Ossel made a dismissive sound. He's a cargo hauler. He has no psychic ability. The system will absorb him. Selu said nothing, but she pulled up the human's file again and read the section on Earth neurology for the 3rd time. Pattern recognition. Threat detection. The ability to notice a single wrong detail in a complex environment. These are not psychic gifts. They were survival tools, sharpened over millions of years on a planet that was constantly trying to kill its inhabitants. Inside the dream, Ravi was busy. He had stopped pretending. Not outwardly. He still kissed Priya goodbye each morning and walked to work and smiled at the neighbors. But behind his eyes, he was running tests every waking hour. He drove to the edge of town. The road curved gently and brought him back to the same intersection. He drove the other direction. Same result. The town was a loop, beautifully disguised, but a loop all the same. He asked his co-worker at the port about a news event from 6 months ago. The man gave a vague answer that sounded detailed, but contained no actual facts. He asked a different question the next day and got a response with the same sentence structure, just different words plugged in. The people around him were not real. They were constructs, following scripts that were good enough to fool someone who was not looking. But Ravi was looking. He started writing things down. Small details. The color of a car parked on his street. The number on a license plate. The pattern of cracks in the sidewalk outside his house. He wrote them in a notebook and hid it under the mattress. The next morning, he checked. The car was the same color, but the license plate had changed by 1 digit. The cracks in the sidewalk had shifted. And 3 pages in the middle of his notebook were blank, though he had filled them the night before. The dream was editing itself while he slept. It was reading his notes and adjusting. That night, he sat in the living room after Priya went to bed. The house was quiet. The fake stars glowed through the fake windows. He could feel the wrongness of it all pressing against his skin like humidity before a storm. He picked up a glass from the kitchen counter and threw it against the wall. It shattered. Priya did not wake up. The shards lay on the floor, glittering under the kitchen light. Ravi counted. He stared at them and did not move. After 3 seconds, the shards trembled. After 4 seconds, they slid across the floor like something was pulling them. After 5 seconds, the glass was whole again, sitting on the counter as if nothing had happened. 5 seconds. That was the repair time. He filed that away. He threw the glass again. 5 seconds. Again. 5 seconds. Again. This time he threw it harder, and it left a dent in the wall. 6 seconds to repair. The more damage, the longer the fix. The system had limits. He stood in the middle of his kitchen at 3 in the morning, surrounded by a world that was not real, and he spoke out loud. I know you're listening. I know this is not real. And I'm coming out. In the monitoring room, every screen flashed. Selu's 4 eyes went wide. The human's neural readings were spiking beyond anything in the Ilhari medical database. His brain was not just passively resisting the dream. It was actively pushing against the construct walls, like a man pressing his hands against the sides of a box, searching for the weak point. Director, Selu said. Her voice was steady, but her hand were not. He is lucid, fully lucid. He knows. Ossel stared at the screens. For 10 long seconds, he said nothing. Drop into layer 2, he said finally. Build it harder. Build it uglier. He distrusts comfort, so give him pain. Make it feel real. Salo hesitated. Sir, his brain is adapting faster than the engine can. Do it. She did it. But as she initiated the layer collapse, she watched the human's neural patterns on her screen. They were chaotic, fierce, relentless. Like a fire that grew stronger the more you try to smother it. She had imprisoned psychic warlords who could crush minds with a thought. None of them had frightened her. This one ordinary human, with no powers and no weapons and nothing but raw stubbornness, frightened her. The hospital smelled like disinfectant and old metal. Ravi opened his eyes to a cracked ceiling and a thin blanket, and the sound of machines beeping somewhere to his left. His mouth was dry. His head hurt. A doctor with tired eyes stood at the foot of his bed, reading from a tablet. Good news, the doctor said. You are awake. Bad news, you have been in a coma for 3 weeks. Cargo accident. Your ship took a hit from debris near the Palace relay station. Do you remember? Ravi stared at him. The fluorescent light above flickered. The bed was uncomfortable. The blanket was scratchy. A woman in the next bed was coughing hard, and no one was helping her. This was not the sunny apartment. This was not the happy life with Priya and the little girl and the purple tree on the fridge. This was ugly and cold, and it hurt. For a full day, he almost believed it. The details were better this time. Much better. The people had histories. The food had real texture. When he bit into the terrible hospital sandwich, the bread was stale in a way that felt honest. When a nurse dropped a tray in the hallway, nobody cleaned it up for 20 minutes. There was mess and noise and imperfection, and all of it whispered to him that this was the real world and the beautiful apartment had been the dream. But on the second day, he watched the news. A broadcast mentioned a trade dispute between 2 colony systems. He made a mental note of the numbers. 6 hours later, he watched the same channel. The same story ran, but the numbers had changed. Not by much, just enough. He closed his eyes. They had learned. They had studied what made him suspicious the first time, the smoothness, the perfection, and they had built a rougher world. A believable world, one that matched the hard life he actually knew. But they could not fake randomness. Not completely, because true randomness required a universe that was not paying attention to you, and this universe was watching him every second. He did not panic. He did not shout. He ate his bad sandwich and stared at the cracked ceiling and began his tests again. In the real world, Selu sat in her monitoring station and read a research paper on human evolution for the 4th time. The section that kept drawing her back was about something called the savanna hypothesis. Humans had evolved on open grasslands where predators could hide in tall grass. Survival depended on noticing things that were slightly wrong. A shadow that was too dark. A patch of grass that moved against the wind. A silence where there should have been birdsong. Over millions of years, this had carved a brain that was essentially an anomaly detection machine. It did not need psychic power to sense that something was off. It just needed to pay attention. And the more pressure you put on it, the sharper it got. She brought this to Asul. He listened with the expression of a man being told something he did not want to hear. Drop him deeper, Asul said. Sir, deeper will not help. His brain adapts to each new layer faster than the last. Layer 1 took him 9 days to crack. Layer 2 took 3. If we keep going, he will start breaking through in hours. Then we make the layers more complex. We are burning through psychic energy at 4 times the normal rate. 3 mind weavers are already showing fatigue. The engine was not designed for this kind of sustained resistance. Asul's 4 eyes narrowed. It was designed to contain psychic war criminals. Are you telling me it cannot hold 1 human freight pilot? Sayla did not answer that question. She went back to her station and she followed orders. She dropped Ravi into Layer 3. He woke up in a prison cell. Real-looking guards. Real-looking inmates. Real-looking violence. They were giving him a world built on fear instead of comfort, because they had learned he could see through happiness. He lasted 2 days before he noticed that the guards changed shifts at exactly the same time down to the second. Real guards were never that precise. He found the seam and pulled. Layer 4. A war zone. Explosions and mud and death. He found it in 18 hours. The dead bodies always fell in the same direction. Layer 5. A childhood memory, rebuilt and expanded. His mother's kitchen. The smell of rice and spices. This one hurt. This one almost held him because it used his own love against him. But his mother had a scar on her left hand from a cooking accident, and the dream put it on the right hand. He noticed. He always noticed. Layer 6, Layer 7, Layer 8. Each one fell faster than the last. His brain was not just detecting the flaws anymore. It was learning the architecture of the system itself. He could feel the patterns underneath the dreams, the way the psychic energy flowed, where it was thick and where it was thin, where the mind weavers were concentrating and where they were stretched. He could not manipulate it. He had no psychic power, but he could map it, like a blind man learning the shape of a room by running his fingers along the walls. After 11 real-world days and 6 collapsed layers, Ravi sat in the white emptiness where the latest dream used to be. He did not rage. He did not scream. He simply sat cross-legged on nothing and waited. In her monitoring room, Selu watched the data scroll across her screen and felt something she had never felt in 12 years of building prisons for the most dangerous minds in the galaxy. She felt outmatched. The white room had no walls, no floor, no ceiling. It was just light in every direction, empty and humming with a faint vibration that Ravi could feel in his teeth. He sat in the middle of it with his knees drawn up and his arms resting on them, and he waited. He had gotten good at waiting. When you had torn through 8 fake worlds in 11 days, patience was the only weapon you had left. He heard her before he saw her. A soft sound like fabric moving through water, and then she was there. Tall, blue-white skin, for eyes too large and too small, all of them the color of deep water. She wore a simple gray robe, and she stood about 10 feet away and looked at him the way a surgeon looks at an X-ray that shows something impossible. "You are real," Ravi said. It was not a question. He could tell. After weeks of fake people, a real presence felt different. Heavier, less polished. She had a small mark on her chin that served no narrative purpose. A real imperfection on a real face. "I am," she said. "My name is Selu. I am one of the architects of your containment. You built this place." "I helped build it, yes." Ravi nodded slowly. "It is good work. The first one nearly got me. The wife, the kid, the little apartment. That was cruel. Effective, but cruel." Sela did not flinch, but something moved behind her eyes. She sat down across from him, folding her long legs beneath her. The white space hummed around them. "I'm here to make you an offer," she said. "If you stop resisting, we will construct any reality you wish. Any world, any life. You can live out a full human lifespan in comfort and peace. You will grow old. You will be happy. You will never know the difference. And if I keep fighting, then we will continue burying you. Deeper and deeper. Eventually, the cognitive strain will damage your brain. You will not die, but you may lose the ability to distinguish reality from construct permanently. You will be trapped not because we hold you, but because your own mind will no longer be able to find the way out." Ravi looked at her. She was telling the truth. He could see it. She was not threatening him. She was warning him. And there was a difference. "Why am I here?" he asked. "Not in this room. In this facility. Why did you take me?" "You were transporting Tulloch refugees through Ilhari space. The refugees carry information the Dominion does not want shared. Eliminating you would have created a diplomatic incident with Earth. This was considered the cleaner option. The Tulloch, the reptilian people. Green-gray skin, wide mouths. Yes, they're alive." Sayla paused, just for a second. A tiny hesitation, barely a breath long. But Ravi had spent weeks in a world where he survived by noticing pauses and glitches and moments that did not flow right. That hesitation told him everything. "They are alive," Selu said carefully. "They are being held in a separate facility. But not comfortably." Another pause. "They are alive." Ravi looked down at his hands. They were not his real hands. Even here, in this white space between dreams, he was still inside the machine. His real body was lying on a slab somewhere, wired to a device that fed false worlds into his skull. His real hands were probably thin and pale and trembling. "I had a life, you know," he said quietly. "Not a great one. Grew up in a poor district on Morrow Colony. Dad left early. Mom worked 2 jobs. I started hauling cargo at 19 because it was the only work that paid. Never had a wife. Never had a daughter. That first dream you gave me, the apartment and the family, that was everything I ever wanted. And I had to tear it apart with my own hands because it was not real. Sayla said nothing. You want to know why I will not stop? Ravi looked up at her. His eyes were red and tired, but they were steady. It is not because I am brave. It is not because I am tough. It is because I have been lied to my whole life by people who said things would get better if I just stayed quiet and did what I was told. And I am done being quiet. He stood up. In the white emptiness, the motion felt strange, like standing on a cloud. There are people in your other facility who trusted me to get them somewhere safe. I took their money. I gave them my word. And I did not break my word just because someone offers me a comfortable dream. Sayla stood too. She looked at him for a long time with all 4 of her eyes, and he could see something shifting behind them. Not agreement, not sympathy exactly, but recognition. The look of someone who was beginning to understand that she had been on the wrong side of something without realizing it. I will tell the director you refused, she said. Tell him whatever you want. But tell him this too. I have been mapping your machine from the inside. I know how it breathes. I know where it is tired. And I know where it is thin. I'm coming out. It is just a matter of time. Selu turned to leave. The white space began to ripple around her as she prepared to exit the psychic link. Selu, Ravi said. She stopped. When I get out, and I will get out, I will remember that you try to be kind. She left without answering. But in the real world, as she pulled the psychic connection nodes from her temples, her hands were shaking. She sat alone in the monitoring room for a long time. Then she opened the classified refugee detention files and began making copies. 3 weeks. That is how long Ravi Dhawan had been inside the machine. In that time, he had lived what felt like years. He had been a husband, a patient, a prisoner, a soldier, a child. He had been given love and terror and grief and boredom and hope, and he had torn through all of it like a man ripping wallpaper off a rotten wall. 22 layers. 22 fake worlds, each one built smarter than the last, each one designed by minds that could reshape thought like clay. And 22 times, one human brain had found the flaw, pulled the thread, and watched the whole thing come apart. The mind weavers were breaking. In the monitoring room, Sayla watched 3 of her colleagues being carried out on stretchers. Neural fatigue. Their minds had been pouring psychic energy into the dream engine for days without rest, trying to keep up with a subject who refused to stay contained. One of them, a young weaver named Drell, had blood running from his nose and could not remember his own name. The dream engine itself was showing cracks. Not physical cracks, it was a machine the size of a building, humming with enough psychic energy to power a small city. But its processes were strained. Error logs were filling up faster than the system could clear them. It had been designed to maintain one stable dream indefinitely. Instead, it was being forced to build and rebuild again, burning through layers like fuel in a fire. And at the center of it all, one man sat in the ruins of each collapsed world and waited for the next one. Director Ossel stood in the monitoring room with his jaw tight and his 4 eyes fixed on the main display. Ravi's neural readings filled the screen, jagged spikes and deep valleys that looked less like a brain scan and more like a seismic chart during an earthquake. Maximum suppression, Ossel said. Sayla turned. Sir, that protocol is designed for psychic criminals rated class 7 or above. He is a human with 0 psychic ability. I do not care what he is rated. He is burned through 22 layers. Use maximum suppression. It could kill him. It will not kill him. It will bury him so deep he forgets he exists. Activate it. Selu looked at the screen. She looked at the director. She activated the protocol. Inside the dream space, Ravi felt it hit him like a wave of black water. The white emptiness he had been sitting in suddenly folded in on itself. Reality split. He was in a room. Then he was in a different room inside that room. Then another inside that one. Dreams within dreams within dreams. Each one complete. Each one real. each one containing another false awakening that led to another false world that led to another. It was a recursive loop, an infinite spiral designed to trap consciousness in a pattern that had no exit because every exit was just another entrance. For the first time since this began, Ravi screamed. He ran. He tore through layers, but each layer opened into another. He woke up and woke up and woke up, and every time he opened his eyes, he was somewhere new and somewhere false, and the walls kept closing and the spiral kept turning, and he could not find the bottom because there was no bottom. In the monitoring room, his neural activity flatlined. Smooth. Passive. The dream had swallowed him. Selu stared at the screen. Her stomach turned. Asel nodded slowly, satisfied. Leave him, the director said. He is done. But Ravi was not done. Deep inside the recursive loop, in a place that had no shape and no light, something was still working. Not a psychic power, not a weapon, just a brain. A human brain, built by a planet that had spent 4 billion years trying to kill everything on it, shaped by ice ages and famines and predators and plagues, a brain that had learned one lesson above all others: patterns repeat. And if a pattern repeats, it can be recognized. In the silent dark of the infinite loop, Ravi stopped running. He stopped screaming. He stopped trying to wake up. He sat down in the nothing, and he breathed, and he listened. Not with his ears, with something deeper. With the part of his brain that had once helped his ancestors notice the rhythm of seasons and the movement of stars and the way a river floods at the same time every year. The loop was not infinite. It was one pattern repeated. Like a hallway of mirrors, it looked endless, but it was the same mirror copied 1,000 times. And once he saw that, once he truly saw it, the illusion of infinity collapsed. He did not break out. He stepped sideways, through the pattern, through the gap between one repetition and the next, like finding a door in a wall that everyone else thought was solid. The dream engine overloaded. Every screen in the monitoring room went white. A sound like tearing metal filled the facility. Alarms erupted down every corridor. 3 more mind weavers collapsed as the psychic backlash ripped through the network. Asel stumbled backward. Sayla gripped the edge of her console and stared at the main screen, where Ravi's neural readings had gone from flatline to a spike so high it was off the chart. In a containment cell deep in the facility, a human body that had been lying still for 3 weeks opened its eyes. Ravi sat up. He reached up and pulled the psychic dampeners off his temples. His hand was shaking badly. His nose was bleeding. His vision was blurred, and his muscles screamed from weeks of stillness. But he was awake. He was real. He could feel the cold metal of the slab beneath him, and it was ugly and hard, and it did not adjust to make him comfortable. And that was how he knew. He swung his legs off the slab and stood up. His knees nearly gave out. He grabbed the wall and held himself upright and breathed until the world stopped spinning. Down the corridor, he could hear alarms. He could hear voices shouting in a language he did not speak, but somehow, after weeks inside their machine, partially understood. He had people to find. The corridor was long and curved and lit by strips of pale blue light that flickered with every alarm pulse. Ravi moved along the wall with one hand, bracing himself, and the other wiping blood from his upper lip. His legs felt like they belonged to someone else. 3 weeks on a slab had turned his muscles to wet rope. Every step was a negotiation between his will and his body, and his will was winning, but only barely. The facility was in chaos. The dream engine's overload had sent a psychic shockwave through every system in the building. The Ilhari used telepathic networks for communication, security, and navigation. All of it was scrambled. Guards stumbled through hallways, clutching their heads, unable to hear each other's thoughts. Doors that should have been sealed stood open because the psychic locks had failed. Ravi, who had no psychic ability and therefore no psychic vulnerability, was the clearest mind in the building. He should not have known where to go. He had never seen this facility with his real eyes. But the weeks he had spent inside the dream engine, mapping its patterns, tracing the flow of psychic energy, had left something behind. Not a power, more like an echo. He could feel the shape of the building the way you can feel the layout of a house you have walked through in the dark. Left here, Down this ramp. Through that door. He found a refugee holding cells 4 levels below the dream chamber. The door was open, it's locked dead. Inside, huddled against the far wall, were 36 Tullik. Green-gray skin. Wide, frightened mouths. The same faces from his first memory. The real one, the cargo hold, and the red lights, and the alarms. A stocky Tullik with a scar across his snout stepped forward. Fungaro, the one who had hired him. Dewan. Fun's voice cracked. They told us you were dead. Not dead, just sleeping. Ravi leaned against the door frame and tried to look steadier than he felt. We need to move. Now, can your people walk? They could walk. Some of them could barely walk, thin and weak from weeks in detention, but they could move, and that was enough. Ravi led them into the corridor. The alarms were still screaming. Blue lights strobed overhead. Somewhere deeper in the facility, he could hear Ilhari voices raised in panic. They made it 2 levels up before Selu found them. She stepped out of a side corridor, alone, holding a data tablet and a small device that looked like a key card. She looked at Ravi and his group of 36 battered refugees, and she did not reach for a weapon or call for guards. Landing bay is 3 levels up, Section 9, she said. Your ship is in docking berth 4. They never dismantled it. She held out the data tablet. Refugee detention files. Transfer codes. Flight clearance for the outer gate. It will expire in 20 minutes. Ravi took the tablet. Come with us. I cannot. They will know you helped. Yes. She said it simply, without drama. But someone should answer for what was done here. It might as well be someone who understands why it was wrong. Ravi looked at her. This woman had built the prison that held him. She had designed the beautiful fake wife and the fake daughter and the perfect lie of a life he never had. And she was also the only person in this facility who had looked at what they were doing and decided it was not right. He nodded. No speeches. No grand words. Just one person recognizing another person's courage. They ran. 3 levels up. Section 9. The landing bay was a wide, cold space with 6 docking berths carved into the rock of the dead moon. Ravi's cargo ship, the Morrow Drift, sat in berth 4, dusty and powered down but intact. He got the refugees on board. Fun helped the weaker ones up the ramp while Ravi dropped into the pilot's seat and ran the startup sequence with hands that would not stop shaking. The engines caught. The navigation systems booted. The flight clearance Selu had given him unlocked the outer gate. Then the ship shuddered. A psychic pulse hit the hull, not physical but mental, a wave of pressure designed to incapacitate everyone on board. The Tulla cried out and grabbed their heads. Finn dropped to one knee. Ravi felt it wash over him like cold water. It pushed against his mind, looking for a way in, trying to shut him down. It found nothing to grab. After 3 weeks inside the dream engine, after 22 layers and a recursive loop designed to erase his consciousness, his brain had developed something the Ilhari had never seen before. Not a psychic shield, just scar tissue. Mental calluses built up by relentless pressure, the same way a worker's hands harden after years of rough labor. The psychic pulse slid off him like rain off stone. He pushed the throttle forward. The Morrow Drift launched out of the berth, through the gate, and into open space. Behind him, Director Ossel stood in the control room and screamed orders that no one could follow because the telepathic network was still down. Beside him, Selu stood with her hands clasped behind her back and watched the cargo ship's engines flare blue against the black, and she did nothing at all. Ravi flew for 9 hours straight. He delivered the refugees to a safe port on Denali Station, a neutral outpost beyond Ilhari space. Finn thanked him with tears running down his scarred face. Ravi shrugged and said he was just finishing the job he was hired for. The Ilhari Dominion filed a formal protest with Earth's government. Earth's diplomats responded with carefully worded outrage about the illegal detention of a human citizen. Behind closed doors, Earth's intelligence agencies were far more interested in the fact that a human had broken out of dream technology that no psychic species had ever escaped. Ravi did not care about any of that. He sat in the pilot's seat of the Morrow Drift, alone, staring at the stars through the cockpit window. He had not slept since waking up. Every time he closed his eyes, he was afraid he would open them in a sunny apartment with a purple tree on the fridge. But he could not stay awake forever. His body was broken and exhausted, and it needed rest. Real rest, not the false sleep of a machine. He leaned back in his chair. He closed his eyes. His hands gripped the armrests. His jaw was tight. Then, slowly, he let go. He slept. And for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, he dreamed his own dreams. They were messy and strange, and made no sense, and they were his. Across the galaxy, in a quiet Ilhari archive, Selu filed her report. It was 200 pages long. It detailed every failure, every adaptation, every impossible thing the human brain had done inside the machine. At the bottom, she wrote a single recommendation and underlined it twice. Do not imprison humans in dreams. They do not stay buried. They dig.